Hey everyone, welcome back to Curious Minds. I'm Rajiv and with me is my friend Raju. And in today's video, we are going to demystify artificial intelligence or AI. You have probably heard a lot of buzzwords like ChatGPT, Gen AI, machine learning, and deep learning, etc. But what do they actually mean? Our goal today is to break down these common AI terminologies. And whether you are a business professional, a student, or just someone curious about this amazing technology, understanding these terms is important as these are literally changing the world around us and would impact both our personal as well as professional life. So we start with understanding or just knowing a bit about what does artificial intelligence mean. So AI is broad concept of machines performing tasks that typically require human intelligence. If we take some simple examples to understand what does AI mean, think about how email filters out spam emails automatically, or how your phone suggests the next word when you're typing a message. That's AI in action. It's a whole field dedicated to making machines smarter, faster, and more helpful. More helpful. Even things such as Netflix always recommending us the kind of movies we want to watch, or YouTube or Instagram showing us the videos we love to watch. So we are hooked onto our screens forever. That's again AI in action. So we have heard this term a lot more after the advent of recent chat GPTs, etc. But then AI has always been around us for quite some time now.
Yeah. Similarly, now moving on to machine learning, right? So, what is machine learning? This is where things start to get interesting for businesses. Machine learning is basically a subset of AI, and it's all about teaching machines to learn from data. So, instead of programming every single rule, you feed the system data, right? And it figures out patterns on its own. Imagine you're running an online store. So, with machine learning, you can analyze your customers' browsing and purchase histories to predict why they might want to buy next, right? It also keeps improving over time, and that's the beauty, right? It learns from every new piece of data without you having to explicitly or manually provide instructions every time. It's an extremely powerful tool for businesses, and with many users, such as understanding customer behavior, offering personalized products or discounts to customer, or detecting suspicious banking transactions.
That's machine learning for you. Thanks, Raju, for that. Now, if we take it a step further from machine learning, we get into a subset of machine learning, which is also called deep learning. It's inspired by how our brains work. Our brain is made up of millions of neurons who work together to understand and process information. Similarly, deep learning replicates the behavior of our brains using something called as artificial neural networks, right? Which this picture probably depicts how the neural networks are connected with each other. So imagine a massive network of interconnected nodes, each making small, simple decisions. But when you link thousands and even millions of these nodes together and they are working in tandem, they can handle incredibly complex tasks. Again, let's take brains analogy, right? If we show a kid many pictures of cats and dogs, after a point, they will start recognizing and differentiating between what a cat is and what is a dog. Similarly, in deep learning, AI is trained of extremely large set of data through which it can perform tasks like recognizing images, understanding speech, etc.
Yeah, so basically, deep learning is particularly useful for tasks that are easy for humans, right, but have been historically very difficult for machines, like interpreting images, language, complex decision making, and so on, right? Speaking of interpreting images, let's talk about computer vision. That is another subset of deep learning, right, which helps machines see and understand visual information. So a question might arise, right? How will it help businesses? So, well, it could mean automating quality control on production lines in shop floors, right? By analyzing images, or it could be used in situations where security camera footages are used to detect suspicious behavior. Self-driving car is a big use case, right, which relies heavily on computer vision to understand their surroundings And we are already seeing companies like Tesla, Google's Waymo, which uses computer vision for self-driving cars. So to wrap things up, all these technologies that Rajiv and I talked about, like AI, machine learning, deep learning, and computer vision, all of these are interconnected. So we have covered the foundational concepts of AI. Now let's shift gears because we are about to dive into an area of AI that has taken the world by storm with the release of ChatGPT just about 2 years ago.
Yes, thanks, Raju, for that wrap of what we have discussed so far. So if we now go a bit more deeper and step into the world of generative AI, this is where AI doesn't just learn from data, but it also creates something new. You may be hearing terms like prompt engineering, hallucination, NLP or natural language processing, GPT being thrown around, but you may not be able to tell the difference between them. What do they actually mean? We will try and unpack these concepts in a way that's easy to digest and understand. And by the end of this section, we are hoping that you will have some understanding of these key terms used in generative AI. Let's jump in and start with the term at the center of it all, generative AI or Gen AI, which it's popularly called. Let's try to understand it with an analogy. So imagine you have a friend who loves telling stories. Raju here also loves telling stories. But here's the cool part. This friend just doesn't tell stories you have heard before. They are very, very creative and innovative. So let's say if you give them a few ideas, like a dragon, a castle, a brave knight, and they will create story very quickly, a brand new story, which you have never heard before. So every time you ask, it's a different story, even if the ideas are the same, right? So that's what generative AI does. So basically, it takes bits of information like pictures or words it's learned from and creates something new that never existed before, like a story, a picture, or even a song. It can create something new which did not exist before, and that's why we call it Gen AI.
Yeah. So you would want to
Do
know,
you want
right?
to add more to that?
Yeah. So naturally, a question would arise, right? How does generative AI come up with something new every time, right? How does it do that? So think of it like this. Generative AI has learned from a lot of examples. And when I say lot, I mean really a humongous amount of examples. It has learned from literally every book, picture, music, web page that is available on the internet. It has basically digested the whole of the internet. So you can imagine the amount of data that it has looked through. So having digested such vast amount of data, it has understood the patterns, the similarities, associations in the data, right? And it can synthesize all of that to create brand new content. That's mind boggling, right? People are already using generative AI. For example, ChatGPT, which many of you may be using already, Google's Gemini, Claude's and Anthropic, right? So these are some of the AI tools in real life that people are already using. They're using it to brainstorm ideas, summarize documents, draft emails, create recipes, vacation plans, etc. But how do they interact with apps like ChatGPT? They do so by something called as natural language processing or NLP, which again you might have just heard being thrown around you, right? What is NLP? NLP or natural language processing is a field of artificial intelligence again that focuses on how computers can understand, interpret, and generate human language, right? The way we talk. So machines are basically able to deconstruct that and provide a response to our queries. And NLP is the same technology that is behind things like voice activated virtual assistants like Siri and Alexa that we so heavily depend on in our day-to-day lives, right? Language translation apps and even chatbots like ChatGPT. All of these technologies or these apps, these wonderful solutions are built on top of natural language processing as the engine behind it. Let's move on to generative pre-trained transformers. Rajiv?
Yes, let's do that. So we use this term chat GPT. So let's try and understand what does this term GPT means in chat GPT. So GPT stands for generative pre-trained transformer. Now you don't need to remember this name, this acronym itself is fine. You don't need to remember the full form, but let's try and understand what does the GPT mean. So let's break it down one by one. Generative part means it can create content, whether it's text, code, or images. And then P stands for pre-trained. Uh, and pre-trained means it has already been trained from a massive amount of text like books, websites, and articles. So it has strong understanding of language and context. And then the third, which is T for transformer, which is the architecture based on neural networks that we spoke about earlier. And this architecture enables the handling of large amounts of information in parallel. And remember the context of what it's working on, because remember we showed you that picture of neural networks. There are thousands or millions of nodes. Each one of them can do tasks independently, but at the same time they are able to work together in tandem, right? So that's that transformer technology, which is able to amaze us every single time we interact with this technology, which with apps like ChatGPT, Anthropics, and the likes.
Yeah.
You want to add more to that, Raju?
Yeah, basically, I just wanted to add, right, this GPT architecture that Rajiv just talked about, the generative, the pre-trained transformer architecture, that is basically the real, engine or the heart behind the large language model, which basically runs apps like ChatGPT. Let's understand a bit more about LLMs. Rajiv, would you mind bringing up the screen?
Sure, sure. I'll,
Yeah,
I'll, I'll bring it up.
right. So what is a large language model? So a large language model, abbreviated as LLM, is a type of artificial intelligence that has been trained on a lot of text data. That's important to note, right? Text data. It's like a smart conversation partner that can create human sounding text in response to your questions. Again, ChatGPT, Gemini, Claude, some of these examples that we already mentioned, right? What these large language models can do, they can answer questions, they can write poetry, they can summarize long PDFs, and they can even generate programming code in most languages. All you need to do is ask questions in natural language like you would ask any human being. But do you think these AI models are good at generating text content only? So that's just one part of it. These models are becoming more sophisticated. Now these models are also able to generate other forms of content like images, videos, and audios. That's where the multimodal language models come into play. A multimodal language model, MMLM, is a type of artificial intelligence again that has been trained on lots of images, not text. We already covered that as part of large language model. MMLMs are trained on a massive amount of images, videos, and audio data. It's like having a smart conversation partner. They can take inputs from us in any of these formats, right? And can generate response in any of the format. Raji, you want to add some examples for MMLMs?
Yeah. Let's add some examples to so text to image, right? So tools like Midjourney, DALL-E takes natural language prompts, generates high quality, high resolution images. It's literally difficult to differentiate between the real images or the images generated by these tools. They are really incredible in terms of detailing and the creativity with which they create these pictures. And then OpenAI's Sora, which can do text to video, and it's an incredibly AI powered video generator tool. You just give it texts and it can create stunning videos with high quality Hollywood level visuals, animations, and even voiceovers in just a few minutes, which can take hundreds and thousands of dollars, and maybe a lot of people and many days to create. So it is just able to replicate that in minutes. And I think because of that, we were talking about it, Raju, that the shares, in fact, the stock of Netflix, it has been on a rise since last 6 months, 1 year, ever since this has came in, because
Yeah.
Netflix is in business of creating content, and if the content creation becomes cheaper because of tools like this, then it will certainly reflect in their bottom line. So you
Yeah.
didn't intend to cover this here, but just cannot keep the
Yeah.
investor in me away. for long. So, and another example is, your text to audio. So recently, Google launched an app called Notebook LLM, through which, if you're able to give it text, it will create audio. In fact, if you give it, say, a PDF, it can create a podcast audio, which is simply incredible.
Yeah, yeah. So it'll sound very yeah, it'll sound very similar to the ones that we are doing, right? Like people sort of having conversation. It's very natural,
Yes, yes, yes,
the speech type. I just want to sort of add
yes,
there.
yes, yes.
Yeah,
Yeah, absolutely. And all of these sound great, but all of these, come with its limitation as well. And Raj, if you want to talk about that
yeah.
a bit.
So, which is what I wanted to sort of get into, right? I think we talked about these wonderful things that AI can do, right? Creating images from text, audios, Hollywood quality videos, and whatnot. But while AI can do all of that, and it's a wonderful tool to have, we should also be conscious of this new technology because it's very new and it's evolving, and at times it can give you incorrect information. This behavior that where basically the LLMs or the Chat GPT, for example, is giving you incorrect information is called hallucination. So let me quickly give you an example of what we mean by hallucination in LLM. So imagine you have a friend who's super confident. He's always at the top of his game and tries to give answers to all your questions, even if they don't really know the answer. So let's say you ask this friend for directions to a new restaurant, and instead of admitting that they don't know or they're not very sure, they'll confidently tell you to turn left, then a right, walk 2 blocks, and it'll be there. You follow their directions, but when you get there, surprise, surprise, there's no restaurant inside because your friend made it up. So this is exactly the kind of behavior which is called as hallucination in the context of large language models. So chatbots like ChatGPT or Google's Gemini, all of these sometimes generate information that may sound very convincing to you. It may sound very human-like, but it may not be accurate. It might just be completely made up. Just like your friend, the AI does not always know the right direction to the restaurant or doesn't always know the right answer, but it tries to respond anyway. Which is why it becomes extremely important to ensure that you do not rely on it completely, especially for content which is fact based, which is factual. You need to ensure that you have done the due diligence on your side. You check the references and don't just rely on what the AI chatbot says. But there are different ways of mitigating that. Rajiv, you want to maybe talk about some of that?
Yeah, you're right, Raju. And like you said, although there are limitations, but then there are ways to overcome that. And we will not dive too much into the details, but I'll quickly touch upon what are some of those ways through which these incorrect information in terms of hallucinations, which can be controlled. First is using your own proprietary data instead of just relying on public data, because public data may or may not be correct. There is all sorts of data available on the internet on which these LLMs are trained. So if you use your proprietary data, your chances of accuracy and factually correct information increases.
Right.
Second is train the model on factual and domain specific data sets. So instead of these LLMs, there could be specific or smaller language models which could be for specific domain specific tasks, and they might be trained on those data sets only. Third is prompt engineering. So basically, this is an intelligence tool. This is like a genie in a box, but it will give you what you ask for. So if you write, detailed and very specific prompts and guide the model to prevent speculation, then it will do the same. So that is why this prompting is also called as prompt engineering, because that is also an art which Raju and I have also been practicing. And what we have discovered that you get better at it only by practicing and getting that experience. So certainly that is one way. And lastly, I would say, fact checking. If you're asking for, factual information, you might want to verify outputs using trusted sources. Because I remember a story when ChatGPT was fairly new. There was a lawyer in US who just made up all the case papers, etc., with the use of ChatGPT, and it literally gave examples of many legal cases and verdicts, etc., and presented it as a proof, and it did not exist.
Yeah.
And that lawyer had to face big trouble. So, fact checking, I think, becomes really, really important. Yeah. So, those are some of the ways to control hallucinations. And
Yep.
now we will move on to part three of it. And Raju, if you want to take us further.
Yeah. So just a quick recap, right? In the previous section, we just covered about generative AI, associated terminologies around generative AI. How basically what kind of different content it can sort of consume and give a response to, like text and images and all of that. And we talked about hallucination and how to control that as well. In this part three, we want to get a little down and just talk about some of the very core, sort of fundamental concepts around how these AI models are trained and how do they learn. We'll get familiar with some of these terms about AI training and learning in this section that we're going to talk about. You might have heard of the word AI model, parameters, supervised learning, unsupervised learning, and so on. We'll try to break down these terms in a way that makes sense. Hopefully we'll try to simplify them as much as we can, and then once you understand these in simple terms, you'll start to appreciate and also see why it is actually essential to know these terms. And you'll also learn how AI basically makes decisions and how it evolves and improves itself over time. So let's start with the core idea of what an AI model really is. So everyone talks about AI model, AI model. An AI model is essentially a set of instructions, coding instructions, code that you program that in a language, and that's the kind of instructions that you give the AI, which the AI uses to make decisions. It's like the brain of the AI. You're basically creating the brain of the AI. The AI model takes in information, processes it, and then makes a prediction. It could be a weather prediction or a sales prediction for a company, so anything around that, or it makes a decision based on what it has learned. It might be fed with a lot of images of tigers or elephants initially, and later, let's say you show it a picture of a tiger or elephant. Because it has seen so many images, it's now trained. It can clearly distinguish between which is at the picture of a tiger and which is an elephant's picture. Traditionally, AI models have been designed for very specific tasks. So, an AI model may be good at just recognizing speech. Another AI model developed could be good in recognizing up photos. And there could be another AI model specifically designed for the purposes of recognizing patterns in customers' purchasing data. But with the advent of these LLMs or large language models, this whole model has been disrupted in the sense that an app like ChatGPT, which is more like a general purpose AI model, can pretty much cater to all these scenarios. It can look at customer purchasing data and analyze patterns. It can identify objects in photos. It can even recognize speech, do language translations, do sentiment analysis. All of that, all of those use cases which were very specific to specific AI models can all be catered to by now ChatGPT. And I think it's very important to understand the next section about this, which is what are parameters and training data. Rajiv, you want to talk about that a bit?
Sure. Yes. Thanks, Raju. So, I think you have touched about AI model, but then how are these AI models built? Which is where parameters and training data comes into play, right? So, think of them as variables within the model, and these are the variables which influence the output of these AI models, right? And since these are variables, they can be adjusted during training, AI training process. But let's try to understand it using a simple example. So let's say we are training an AI model to predict house prices. So in this table, the AI is being trained to predict house prices using three parameters: house size, location, and age of house. And using these three, it will predict the price. Now it's fed with a sufficient amount of training data to be able to start correctly predicting house prices. And once the AI model is trained, and the model is now ready to be used in real world, where it will be fed with these details, and it will be able to predict prices. But over time, as and when it predicts prices and it is fed with the feedback, it will automatically start improving. We'll start adjusting these variables and will get better over time. The example which we just talked about is an example of supervised training, but then these AI models can also be trained on unsupervised. So, Raju, if you want to maybe touch upon
Sure.
what will be an example of an unsupervised training. Maybe if we can just extend this example and see what will an unsupervised training look like, for this context.
Correct. Just to close that off, like Rajiv mentioned, right? The example that we just talked about is supervised learning. It's called supervised because what you are giving the AI model is very nicely, neatly organized data in rows and columns in a particular table format, and you've labeled the columns as house prices or age of the house, etc. So that's why it's called supervised, because you're giving it very structured data. When we talk about unsupervised learning, let's again sort of extend the same house price example. Imagine we have information about thousands of houses which were sold in the last few years, but this data is available in various forms. It could be on online real estate portals, there could be sale deeds, contract notes, there could be some statistical survey done by government agencies. So all these different formats of documents and web pages which contain information about thousands of houses and their prices over the years. So this time, instead of giving the AI model a very neatly structured table with rows and columns, we're feeding all these unstructured data that I just talked about, right? The real estate portal, web pages and contract notes and so on and so forth. But instead, and using this data, right, what the AI model does is we are actually relying on the AI model to it's to find interesting patterns in the data on its own. We are not specifically instructing it to predict house prices. We're saying, here is all this information data from the internet and PDFs and so on and so forth, and pictures and images. Can you find interesting patterns in this data and present the findings to us? The AI might discover on its own that the houses could naturally be clustered into groups, maybe luxury downtown condos, suburban family homes, starter homes in developing neighborhoods. And then it might say how the prices reflect in these clusters. Now, this is not a problem statement that we define for it. It just automatically used all that information, found interesting patterns, organized houses as per clusters, and then started showing the house prices. This is unsupervised learning. The AI is itself finding patterns and connections that we might not have asked explicitly or even have not thought about. In conclusion, as we saw, AI is used in so many different ways in today's world, whether it is to make predictions for house prices that we just saw, whether it's for classifying objects like a cat or a dog based on the picture it is shown, or classifying objects in a road via self-driving cars. Sentiment analysis, let's say, for understanding customer reviews and identifying the sentiments, or recommendation engines like Amazon Shopping or Netflix. All of these are examples or different use cases where AI is used. It's already being used in many of these from the past many years. ChatGPT has just sort of put that on steroids, with more number of use cases being catered to right now. Yeah, I think we've reached the end of this video. Rajiv, you want to sort of quickly conclude this
Yes,
episode?
Raju, thank you for that. That was a wrap to this episode. I hope you found this helpful. We tried to demystify this term AI or artificial intelligence, and we have tried to cover, a few of the terminologies used, thrown around us in a simple way, and we hope this was useful. So yeah, until next time, thank you so much for your time, and we'll see you soon.